Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everybody, to celebrate my 100th guide in SMITE, this will be on the first god I got to Mastery 10, all the way back in Season 2, Anubis. This of course is because 100 is, well, it's 1,000 worshippers to get them Diamond. Diamond is 10. Okay, this made sense earlier, but anyways. Anubis is the highest damaging god in the game, and is playable in the mid lane role, but is the easiest god to kill in the game, at least in theory. Build-wise, you'll notice something different with Anubis compared to other mages. He goes all in on the lifesteal. This is because of Anubis's everything. You'll see what I mean soon enough. Relics-wise, it's only ever really beads and ages with Anubis. Like hell though, he does benefit from buying Shell over Aegis in situations where the enemy team has potent player-made structures like Ymir, Cabrakan, or especially Odin's Cage. Shard-wise, both Claw Shard and Horn Shard work well with Anubis, with Horn Shard of course being the more versatile option, and Claw Shard being more fun. Let's get into what makes Anubis so good with lifesteal by talking about his passive. Every time Anubis damages an enemy with an ability, he gains a stack of his passive, which can stack up to 3 times. Each stack steals protections from the enemy's hit and increases his healing gained from lifesteal. So Anubis doesn't gain any lifesteal with this passive, he just heals more from whatever lifesteal he has built. Let's get into why this passive works for Anubis by talking about his first ability. Anubis enters a channeled state where he's immune from knockups and knockbacks, but moves at 50% speed. He begins dealing damage every 0.5 seconds in a large cone area in front of himself, and this lasts for 3 seconds. And let's get it out of the way now, this ability cooks. If every tick of this ability hits an enemy, it is the highest damaging non-ultimate ability in the game. This is even better when you realize that Anubis' passive activates more than once per ability, so you can very easily get max passive off of just using this ability. Getting every tick on an enemy is the problem with this ability though, as I'm sure you already guessed. It's an ability you need to use sparingly, as it leaves you wide open to attacks, both simply abilities that outrange it, and hard CC abilities that can easily stop it. And since you're moving slower, like a lot slower, any sort of retaliation from your opponents that they may have had before you use this ability is going to be a sure thing once you're using the ability. So before you use the ability, you need to know that your opponents won't just stun you out of it before you're able to get at least half of the ability off on them. Luckily, Anubis can make this easy for himself with the aid of his second ability. Anubis fires a non-damaging projectile that will pass through minions but stops on walls and gods. Upon hitting an enemy god, the enemy god will be stunned, and the stun duration scales up with the level of the ability. It may not seem like it, but this right here is one of the best hard CC abilities in the game, due to its range and the stun duration, but like the rest of the Anubis, it's a big risk. The ability is not easy to hit, and every enemy god in the game is going to do their utmost to try and avoid getting hit by this ability. And if you do miss it, Anubis is straight up out of defensive options, and it's infinitely easy to jump on him. Not to mention he's straight up less useful without this ability. As I'm sure you can guess, Anubis' first ability isn't the only ability that deals damage over time. This means that you need to keep enemies in this stun to deal all of your damage. Luckily, this ability works in tandem with Anubis' third ability to make it not only easier to hit, but also stack crowd control effects. Anubis spawns a circle AoE on the ground, and this circle AoE lasts for 2 seconds and deals damage to all enemies inside of it every 0.5 seconds. Each instance of damage also slows enemies, tying back to your second ability and making it easier to hit now. But you have to be mindful of the startup time of this ability. Half a second doesn't sound too long, but it can be more than enough for enemy gods to know what you're trying to do and back off and give themselves enough distance to maybe only take 1 tick of damage and avoid you. That's where the second ability comes in. You may at first feel like 2ing and then 3ing is the optimal route to go, and it's not bad when you're first starting with Anubis to make sure you hit the wrap. But you really need to focus on mastering Anubis' second ability and using the 3, then 2 as the third ability is starting up. This gives you maximum use time of the stun on your ability and ensures more of your third ability ends up hitting them. Both are important because obviously, more time into 3 means they take more damage. But that also means more time stunned by your 2, so you have an easier time walking up to them and wanting them, if it's safe to do so. Needless to say, 3-2ing isn't really enough to warrant taking yourself out of a safe position. You need to, again, be absolutely sure you can get multiple ticks of your first ability off as well as do it safely. Your third ability also serves as your main wave clear though, so this isn't always an option. And since it does damage over time and slows, this is an example of an ability you want to try and place while the waves are approaching one another. Of course, the classic trick of using your basic attacks to keep the minions inside of your 3 or waiting until they've stopped. If you don't know what that implies, it means that it can be another risk to try and ensure every tick hits every minion in the minion wave. This is why a lot of Anubis players just wait for the enemy lane opponent to clear the wave first and let the enemy wave come to you, so you don't have to leave your tower to still clear the wave. This just goes to show how unsafe Anubis is, especially early on before he gets his lifesteal. Still though, with a competent jungler on your side, you can still obliterate lane opponents from the word go in 2v2 or 2v1 fights. Anubis is a god where you need to pick your fights carefully, but you should definitely still be looking to fight. Try not to use your 2 and 3 too hastily though. As I mentioned, those are his only lines of defense. 3-2 works well for aggression, but it's just as good defensively, and you definitely need to 3 at your feet while retreating, and 180 your camera and 2 enemies as they chase you if you hope to live as Anubis. Still though, that might not be enough to save you, and sometimes Anubis 3ing at your feet, turning around, 2ing, and using your 1 on enemies is the best thing you can do to deal as much damage and lifesteal as much as possible so you can try and survive. Because again, you don't get to 3-1 often, but when you can, those 2 abilities alone can be enough to murder someone to death. But when it comes to killing people so fast that they die, no ability is quite like Anubis' ultimate. Anubis roots himself in place, becoming CC immune. Anubis begins dealing damage every 0.1 seconds for up to 3 seconds, but can cancel out of this ability at any time. Let's get it out of the way now. This is the highest damaging ability in the game and has been since Anubis was released. If you haven't already guessed, 3-2-1 is out since you have access to your ultimate now, and 3-2 ultimate is now your best friend. The ability can be hard to time throughout the match though. In smaller skirmishes and 1v1s, of course, it's rather simple. If you get your 2, or if a teammate gets significant hard CC on a target, you want to ult, like, right away. 3 seconds isn't long when it comes to like running a marathon, but in Smite 3 seconds is an eternity, so you need to use the ultimate as early as possible in just about every situation to ensure you get every single tick. You are standing still though, so quote as early as possible unquote will change vastly depending on the situation. You may want to rely on your jungler and or support to get the enemy's beads or Aegis first. But sometimes it'll be up to you to burn those relics instead with your 2 and ultimate, the 2 burning beads and the ultimate burning the Aegis. And the one positive Anubis has, for all of his flaws, is that if you hit your 2, unless they're a tank, that enemy god has to use their purification beads. And if you use your ultimate at close to mid-range, they have to use their Aegis to avoid dying. To be clear though, you're going to have to stick your neck out and actually follow up off of your 2, or just use your ultimate at good opportunities to actually make your opponents fear you using those tools. If they think you're too afraid to use your unsafe tools like your 1 and or ultimate, they won't use their relics as early as possible against you. The issues arise during and after the ultimate. Anubis is just standing there, like an absolute guy. So everybody in the universe is going to be right on top of you as soon as you ult or right after you use your ultimate. I mean, it's not like you're going anywhere. So this means you need to be aware of a lot of factors before you use this ultimate and position yourself accordingly. Who's the best target to go on in this fight? Is my support and or jungler going to help me CC them? Where does the enemy jungler, soul laner, and support like to sit in the fight, and what will they use to stop me? For instance, if you're against someone like a Naja or a Fenrir, who, sure, can hurt you in the ultimate, but in most situations won't be able to kill you since you're CC immune the whole time. So all you need to do is ult as soon as they try and jump on you, or ult before they even get a chance. But then you have meanies like Nemesis or Susanoo or Serket who revel in the fact that you're just standing there and kill you to death even though you're CC immune and lifestealing. You need to make sure they're not going to be able to jump on you as soon as you start ulting. You can do this by staying as far back as possible, as well as knowing when it's best to cancel the ultimate or just turn the beam on whoever tries to jump on you instead. Because when Anubis ults, it's do or die time. He either kills his intended target or dies. Obviously, like I said, in a one-on-one, if you're good with Anubis, you can kill any mage with his ultimate just fine, other than the gods with exceptional range and or CC such as Thoth or Iset, who don't really kill Anubis but just sort of stall him out so he can't do what he wants to do. Or gods with too much burst or easy escapes like Yu Huang, Vulcan, Poseidon, yeah, and a bunch of others too. Anubis really isn't very good, if you haven't noticed. But regardless, here's some combos with Anubis. 3-2. 3-2-1. 3-2-1 ult. 2-3 ult, chase with your 1 if they're not already dead. For ability leveling, you want 1 at level 1, your 3 at level 2, and your 2 at level 3. From there you max your 3, then put a few levels into your 2 to make the stun longer. This is usually up to 3 points into it. Then max your 1, then go back to leveling the 2, and of course level the ultimate whenever you can. I'd definitely point skip at level 8 so you can max your wave clear, your 3, and your very important ultimate at level 9. Anubis has been one of the worst gods in the game since he was released back in the SMITE beta. Standing still to use your most damaging ability when you're the lowest health god in the game, as it turns out, is not great. And just the fact that everything he does is damage over time. I mean, it's kind of telling that Poseidon and Hubwa, who were released at a similar time, are still irrelevant while Anubis isn't. And if you don't know what those guys do, basically, they both have a lot of burst damage. Anubis' lifesteal is meant to be the difference maker, and in the mid-game, it definitely is. You really can't take trades with Anubis in the mid-game. He has enough range that one player alone can't kill him. They can only do chunks of damage to him safely. Most mages would have to recall to base after getting chunked, but Anubis just lifesteals it all back up. Problem is, he can't do that in the early game, since he lacks the lifesteal items, and he can't do it late game because of anti-heal items and the fact that burst abilities are at their strongest in the late game, and with Anubis' pathetic health stat, he just dies. And he can't go tanking on Anubis because the character's biggest strength, his ability to kill any carry, mid, or jungler, or objectives like Gold Fury and Fire Giant with either 3-1 or 3 ultimate, is lost. and I think both balance and design-wise, Anubis is just lost at this point. Just like most of them. But seriously, if you want some fun, pick up Anubis. It's hilarious what the character can do when he gets ahead. I mean, seriously, if you're ahead and you hit your stun, you just ult and it's like, whoa, ready to go. And frankly, it is fun playing on a knife as you're balancing the line between running over the enemy mage with a single ability and you dying to a single combo from said mage. He's just way too risky and reliant on good teammates and or bad opponents to consistently function properly. That's all I have on Anubis for now. Thanks for watching.